This Sean Donnan in Washington was writing about this in the Financial Times back about 3 weeks ago. This is December 8th. U.S. accuses China over aircraft tax breaks. December 8th, that was the headline. U.S. accuses China over aircraft tax breaks. U.S. officials said on Tuesday that they had filed a request for consultations with Beijing over a value-added tax exemption that is given to domestic aircraft manufacturers, but not foreign ones. Now, this may sound like weird, arcane stuff, but here's a little later on in the story. The U.S. claims that China's tax concession for aircraft manufacturers violates WTO rules because it discriminates against foreign producers, while imported commercial aircraft are subject to a 17% VAT tax. Domestic planes are not. In other words, China is using, surprise, surprise, I've been telling you this for what, years? I mean, I've first wrote about this at some length in Rebooting the American Dream, and that was 6 years ago, I think, but maybe 7. But the value added tax, all the, you know, when America said, when we signed on to these trade deals, from you know, Reagan through Clinton through Obama, I mean, you know, whether it's the Colombia Free Trade Deal or whether it's the Peruvian Free Trade Deal or the South Korean Free Trade Deal or permanent normal trade relations with China or the WTO or NAFTA, or now we've got SHAFTA, the TPP, what Curtis Ellis calls ObamaTrade.com. Now that we've got all these trade deals, essentially, what they all did was they said, okay, every country that signs this deal drops their tariffs down to 0 or damn near 0. So a tariff, of course, is a tax on imported goods. So it used to be that if you made a pair of shoes in Connecticut and it cost you $1 worth of labor to make that pair of shoes, and somebody wanted to import a similar pair of shoes made in China where there was 20 cents worth of labor, or made in Mexico where there was 50 cents worth of labor, that the Chinese shoes would come with an 80-cent tariff when they were imported to equalize the cost of labor. The Mexican shoes would come with a 50-cent tariff to equalize the cost of labor. So no matter where you make your shoes, your labor is going to cost you $1. So you might as well make them in the United States. This was a policy that was put into place by George Washington at the strong urging of his Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. And the whole story, the whole backstory of this and everything is in my book, Rebooting the American Dream. And I'm saying that not to try to sell books. You can read the book for free online over at truthout.org. Just click on my name there. They've got, you know, Thom Hartmann on Truth Out, and then you click on the book, and it's right, the whole book, that and Unequal Protection, 2 of my books. You can read the entire book online, no cost. And of course, you can get them from any library. But it's important stuff. From the George Washington administration until Reagan, we had this protection for domestic manufacturers, for you know, manufacturing in the United States. And manufacturing was anywhere from 1/4 to 1/3 of our economy, which is a good thing. Manufacturing is now 11% of our economy, which is a really bad thing. It's a really dangerous thing. And not only that, much of what we, quote, manufacture is actually weaponry, which is a lousy, you know, I mean, to have that be the basis of your country, of your country's economy, that there constantly be conflicts around the world and people killing each other, that's nuts. So what all these other countries did is they came up with this thing called a value-added tax. And for those of you who are longtime listeners, my apologies for repeating something, but for those of you who are just tuning in, this is an important thing to know. The way a VAT tax or a value-added tax works, and all of the countries, virtually all, as far as I know, all of the countries with whom we trade have VAT taxes, except us. We're the town idiot, right? The Republicans will not allow even a consideration of a new tax, including a value-added tax, a VAT tax. So here's how a VAT tax works. Every time something has its value improved or increased during the manufacturing process, there's a small tax on the added value, thus value-added tax, VAT. So when you start out, you dig iron ore out of the ground, and then you refine it into pig iron, there's a small tax It's a very small tax, right? 1/4%, 0.5%, or whatever. But, for increasing the value of that iron ore, you've now turned it into iron. When that iron then goes to a steel factory and is mixed with other metals and turned into steel, there's a small tax placed on that. When the steel is turned into rolled steel or flat steel, there's a small tax on that. When that flat steel is stamped into the door of a car, there's a small tax on that. When that door is assembled and painted, there's a small tax on that. When that door is attached to the car, there's a small tax on that. So when you're all done, the typical VAT tax in Germany, for example, is around 17%. In most countries, it runs between 14 and 20%. The VAT tax on aircraft in China is 17%, according to the Financial Times, according to Sean Dunn, writing in the Financial Times. Now, keep in mind, that's a tax of 17% that's paid for by people within the country. This is the equivalent of kind of a sales tax. It's arguably a regressive tax because it's a tax that appears on manufactured goods. But the way that these countries are using it, they're using it essentially as a tariff. So what China is saying is if Boeing wants to make an aircraft in the United States and ship it to China, because Chinese citizens would have to pay a 17% VAT tax on aircraft made in China, there's going to be a 17% tax on that aircraft when it enters the country. On the other hand, if they want to export things, there's a 17% discount because we're not Chinese, we're Americans, so we don't have to pay the VAT tax. Germany plays this brilliantly with cars, for example. And again, it's that 17%. And so it's a 17% discount on exports, a 17% tax on imports, which 7 and 7 is 14. So that's a 34%. That's the equivalent of a 34% tariff. Keep in mind, the average tariff in the United States in the George Washington administration until the Ronald Reagan administration was probably in the high 20s, 27, 28, 29%. Sometimes our tariffs got up to 33, 34%, like during World War II. But typically it was right around 30%. So every country in the world is protecting their domestic manufacturers with a VAT tax, using it as if it was a tariff. And we have none. We don't have VAT taxes in the United States because it's a tax. And all these Republicans signed this thing that multimillionaire K Street lobbyist Grover Norquist put together that says, no, I will never support any new tax. Even though a VAT tax, if we had a VAT tax in the United States, you would immediately see all these companies start bringing their factories back home. If we used a VAT tax in the United States the exact same way that China does, the way that Japan does, the way that Taiwan does, the way that South Korea does, the way that Germany does, the way that Holland does, the way that England does, if we did it in the way that any of these countries are doing, you would see manufacturing return to the United States. People say, well, how is it that Germany is still the world's leader in manufacturing, yet they've lowered all their tariffs since they joined the World Trade Organization? Well, it's really simple. They use a VAT tax as an effective tariff. So anyhow, the U.S. is complaining to China about that. Good luck with that, guys. Right.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.